She stood at the front of the enemy ship, guiding the men who murdered her children to freedom. Every word from her lips was a betrayal. Every direction she gave saved the lives of those who'd listened to her sons scream and done nothing. Thyra had lost everything. Her family, her home, her reason to live. They'd reduced her to nothing, invisible and broken. A ghost scrubbing blood from floors while grief consumed her from the inside. But when the siege closed in and 60 warriors faced certain death, she held the one thing they desperately needed, knowledge that could save them all. Now she faced an impossible choice that would haunt her forever. Help her captors escape and become the thing her dead children would despise, or stay silent and watch everyone, including herself, starve slowly in the frozen hell of a Viking siege. Her uncle's army surrounded them, waiting with the patience of wolves. The Eastern Passage offered one chance, one narrow window between rock and tide, but using it meant crossing a line she could never uncross. It meant choosing survival over the vengeance her boys deserved. The war leader stood behind her, axe in hand, watching her every move. He didn't trust her, he couldn't afford to, but he needed her mind more than he feared her hatred. And as the first ship pushed into dark water toward rocks that could crush them or free them, Thyra realized something terrifying. She wasn't sure anymore which outcome she wanted, because the woman who'd boarded this ship wasn't the same woman who would step off it, and there was no going back from what she was about to become. The first time Thyra heard her son's name spoken aloud in 3 months, she was scrubbing blood from the longhouse floor. Her hands froze mid-motion, the rough brush still pressed against the wooden planks. The voice came from somewhere behind her, careless and loud, belonging to one of the younger warriors boasting about the raid. He laughed as he described how the children had cried for their mother before the smoke took them. Her children, her Eric, her little half-Dan who still sucked his thumb at night. The water in her bucket turned pink with someone else's blood while her boy's blood had dried in ashes 2 seasons ago. Thyra's throat closed. She forced herself to keep scrubbing. This was survival now, invisible, silent, breathing when they let her breathe. The other captive women had learned this too, scattered throughout the settlement like broken tools someone forgot to throw away. They weren't valuable enough to ransom, weren't young enough to sell, weren't strong enough to work the fields. Just extra mouths attached to bodies nobody wanted. Her knees ached against the floor. 32 years old, and her body already felt ancient, worn down by grief that sat in her chest like a stone she'd swallowed whole. More mead here, woman. The warrior's boot kicked toward her, spraying droplets of ale across the boards she'd just cleaned. Thyra stood slowly, keeping her eyes down. She'd learned that too. Never look directly at them. Never give them a reason to remember your face. She reached for the pitcher with hands that had once held her father's sword during training, back when she was the daughter of Jarl Erlinger, back when her name meant something besides mud. The great hall buzzed with nervous energy tonight. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the way the men clustered together, voices low and urgent. Warriors kept glancing toward the doors as if expecting something terrible to walk through them. Thyra moved between the tables like a ghost, pouring drinks, collecting empty horns. Her ears caught fragments of conversation. 3 longships spotted at dawn. Brander's banner. Surrounding the fjord approaches. Her heart lurched. Brander, her uncle, her father's brother who'd taught her to play Hnafatafl on winter nights, who'd braided her hair before her wedding, who'd sworn blood oaths to protect their clan. He'd come for vengeance, not for her, for the dead. But she was here, inside these walls. And if Brander laid siege, she'd starve alongside her captors. The irony tasted like metal in her mouth. Gunnar Eriksson stood near the hearth, firelight carving shadows across his scarred face. He was younger than her by perhaps 5 winters, the war leader who'd personally led the raid that destroyed everything. She'd seen him kill her husband, watched his axe come down while she was dragged backward, screaming, clawing at frozen ground. He'd looked at her once afterward, just once, not with cruelty or triumph, with something worse, emptiness. like she wasn't even human enough to warrant emotion. Now he was arguing with the Jarl's advisors, his jaw tight with frustration. The settlement held maybe 40 fighting men, 20 more who could hold a spear if desperate. Brander commanded 3 ships, which meant at least 90 warriors, maybe more. The math was simple and brutal. "We can't break a siege," one of the older Carls was saying. "Not with winter 2 months away. Our stores won't last." "Then we fight our way out," Gunnar snapped. "To where?" "He controls the fjord. We'd be slaughtered on the water." Thyra set down the pitcher carefully. Her hands were shaking. She knew exactly what Brander would do. She'd grown up watching him plan, learning his strategies over game boards and mead. He'd seal every route, wait for hunger to soften them, then offer terms designed to split them from within. He was patient, methodical, ruthless when needed. The door burst open. A scout stumbled in, breathing hard, frost clinging to his beard. "They've landed," he gasped. "North and south beaches. We're surrounded." The hall erupted. Men shouted over each other, fear raw in their voices. Someone knocked over a bench. The captive women pressed themselves against the walls, trying to disappear completely. Thyra's mind raced. North and south beaches meant Brander had split his forces. Confident. The terrain would protect him, but she knew something these warriors didn't. There was a third approach, a rocky stretch on the eastern shore that looked impassable at high tide. Her father had used it once to surprise raiders. Brander would remember. He'd leave it lightly guarded because most men wouldn't think to try it. But if these warriors attempted an escape that way without knowing the tide schedules, without understanding which rocks stayed submerged, they'd drown in the darkness or break their ships apart. She could tell them. The thought appeared unbidden, unwelcome. She could save them. Her sons' faces flashed behind her eyes. Eric's gap-toothed smile. Halfdan reaching for her in the morning light. These men had murdered them. The stone in her chest grew heavier. Let them starve. Let Brander's patience crush them. Let them feel helpless and terrified like she'd felt watching the flames take her babies. But she'd starve too. All the captive women would. Brander's siege wouldn't. Distinguish between warrior and thrall when the food ran out. Gunnar's voice cut through the chaos. Quiet. The hall fell silent. He stood with his back to the fire, authority radiating from him despite his young age. "We inventory supplies at dawn. Double the watch. No one leaves without my word." His eyes swept the room and landed on Thyra for half a heartbeat. She looked down immediately, but something cold slithered through her gut. Had he seen her thinking? Could he somehow sense the knowledge burning behind her carefully blank expression? The warriors dispersed slowly, whispering among themselves. Thyra moved to gather discarded cups, her movements mechanical. Her mind screamed at her, "Stay invisible, stay silent, let fate decide." But fate had already decided once before. Fate had burned her children alive. What did she owe fate now? 3 days into the siege, the first horse died. Thyra heard the animal's screams from inside the storage shed where she'd been sent to count. Grain sacks. The sound cut through the morning air like a blade, followed by men's shouts and the heavy thud of a body hitting frozen ground. They'd slaughter it for meat now, stretch the supplies another week. Maybe 2 if they were careful. It wouldn't be enough. She pressed her palm against a sack of barley, feeling the give of half-empty fabric. Someone had been stealing, or the Jarl's steward had lied about winter stores. Either way, these men were looking at starvation long before spring. Thaw. Her stomach cramped with hunger. The captive women received scraps now, watery porridge once a day. Yesterday, one of the older thralls had collapsed while hauling water. They'd left her where she fell for 3 hours before someone bothered to check if she was breathing. Thyra had checked. She was. Barely. The shed door creaked open behind her. She turned, expecting another Carl come to verify her count. But it was Gunnar. Alone. The war leader filled the doorway, blocking most of the weak sunlight. His hand rested on his axe handle, not threateningly, just habitually, like breathing. Her pulse jumped. Men didn't seek out thralls alone unless they wanted something, and there were only so many things men wanted from women with no power to refuse. How much? His voice was rough from shouting orders all morning. Thyra's mind went blank. My lord? The grain. How much is left? She swallowed, looked at the sacks again, buying time. Why was he asking her? 17 sacks, my lord. Maybe 3 more weeks of rations if you cut portions again. Brander knows we're low. It wasn't a question. Gunnar moved further into the shed, and Thyra instinctively stepped back until her spine hit the wall. He didn't seem to notice, his eyes scanning the meager supplies with the expression of a man doing calculations he didn't like. He's waiting for us to get desperate. She said nothing. Safest answer was always silence. You're from Erlinger's hold. Still not a question. You were at the high table during the feast. Before. Such a small word for the day her world burned. Thyra kept her face carefully empty. Yes, my lord. Brander is your uncle. Her hands clenched into fists behind her back where he couldn't see. My father's brother, my lord. Gunnar was quiet for a long moment. Outside, men were butchering the horse, their voices carrying through the thin walls. Someone made a joke. Someone else laughed. Normal sounds in an abnormal situation. Does he know you're alive? Gunnar asked. The question landed like a punch. Did Brander know? She'd assumed he thought her dead with the others, but if he'd learned she survived, would he negotiate for her? Or would he consider her already lost, contaminated by captivity, not worth the cost of ransom? Viking law was clear about women taken in raids. They belonged to their captors now, even Jarl's daughters, even nieces of vengeful uncles. I don't know, my lord. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Gunnar studied her with unsettling intensity. She'd forgotten how intelligent his eyes were, how they seemed to strip away pretense and see straight through to bone. She'd noticed it during the raid, even through her terror. This wasn't a mindless brute who killed for pleasure. This was a tactician who killed because he was very, very good at it. If he does know, Gunnar said slowly, he might offer terms. Hope flared in her chest before she could stop it. Trade her for safe passage. Let these warriors leave if they handed her over? She'd be free. She'd be with family again. She'd be... The image of Eric's face flashed behind her eyes. Would Brander even want her back? The aunt who'd survived while his nephew and great-nephew burned? Or, Gunnar continued, and his tone made her stomach drop, he might refuse any negotiation while you're here. Knowing we have you might make him more brutal, more willing to wait until we're eating boot leather. Thyra's throat closed. She understood. She wasn't a bargaining chip. She was a liability. If Gunnar thought her presence made things worse, if he decided she was costing them more than she was worth, thralls disappeared all the time, especially ones nobody would ransom anyway. I've done nothing wrong, my lord. The words tumbled out desperately. I work hard. I don't cause trouble. I'm not going to kill you. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. Flat, matter of fact. I'm trying to understand the situation. She didn't believe him, couldn't afford to. Men said things they didn't mean when it suited them. Gunnar turned toward the door, then paused. You know something. Her blood turned to ice. Earlier, in the hall when the scout arrived, you had this look, like you were solving a puzzle. He faced her again, and there was something new in his expression. Curiosity. What did you figure out that we didn't? Deny everything. Play stupid. Pretend confusion. But he was watching her too. Closely. And she'd never been good at lying, not even when her life depended on it. Her father used to say her face showed every thought like clouds reflected in water. Nothing, my lord. I was just frightened. You're frightened now. That's different. He took a step closer. Not menacing, but deliberate. You grew up in a Jarl's hall. You sat at strategy sessions. You heard war plans discussed over meals. Oh gods, he knew, or suspected. Either way, she was exposed. I'm just a thrall now, my lord. Her voice shook. I don't know anything about war. You're Erlinger's daughter. His voice dropped lower. His only surviving child. You weren't married off to some minor Carl for alliance. Your father kept you close. Taught you things daughters don't usually learn. Tears burned behind her eyes. Yes. Her father had taught her, treated her like the son he'd never had until her late marriage at 26. She'd learned strategy, politics, the mathematics of supply lines. She'd been good. At it too. Better than her husband, if she was honest. All that knowledge useless now. Worse than useless. Dangerous. What do you want from me? The question came out broken. Gunnar was silent for several heartbeats. The sounds of butchering continued outside. Men laughing. Men who'd killed her sons and would die here, surrounded by her uncle's warriors, unless something changed. I want to know, he said finally, what you saw that I didn't. What made your face change when you heard Brander's name? She could refuse. He might beat it out of her, might torture it from her, or might just kill her and be done with it. Or she could speak. Trade knowledge for what? Survival? Safety? There was no safety here. But there was a third option forming in her mind. Terrible and seductive. If she helped them escape, if she gave them information that saved their lives, they'd owe her. She'd have value beyond scrubbing floors. She might even negotiate real terms. Protection. Food. Maybe. Eventually, freedom. All she had to do was betray her uncle, betray her father's memory, betray her dead children who deserved vengeance, not their mother collaborating with murderers. The stone in her chest pressed against her lungs until breathing hurt. The eastern shore, she whispered. There's a passage at low tide. Gunnar didn't believe her. Thyra could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers drummed once against his axe handle before going still. He thought she was lying or setting a trap. Smart man. Eastern shore is all rocks, he said flatly. Ships would break apart. At high tide, yes. Her voice steadied as she slipped into the familiar rhythm of tactical explanation. It felt like putting on old clothes that still fit despite everything. But twice daily there's a window, maybe 2 hours. The water drops low enough to reveal a channel between the formations. My father used it once, 15 years ago. Why would Brander leave it unguarded if he knows about it? He'll have men there, but not many. Most commanders wouldn't risk it even knowing it exists. The timing has to be perfect. Miss it by even 30 minutes, and you're swimming in the dark or your hull's torn open. Gunnar studied her face like he was reading runes. And you know this timing how? I watched my father's navigator chart it. I was 13. The memory surfaced unwanted. Her father's hand on her shoulder, teaching her to read the moon's pull on water, showing her how warfare wasn't just about swords but about understanding the land itself. The passage only works during neap tides, when moon and sun pull at right angles. Next one starts tomorrow night. She watched understanding dawn in his eyes. Tomorrow. The timing was almost too convenient, which made it seem even more like a trap. If I send scouts and they don't come back, then you'll know I lied, and you can do whatever you want with me. Thyra heard herself say it with a calmness she didn't feel. But your men are already dying. The horse today. How long before you start losing warriors to hunger, to disease? Brander can wait all winter. You can't. The calculation played across Gunnar's face. He was weighing her life against his men's survival. There was no emotion in it, just cold tactical assessment. She should hate him for it. Instead, she recognized it. Her father had made the same expressions during war councils. Why tell me? The question came suddenly, sharp as a blade. Why help the men who killed your family? There it was, the thing she'd been trying not to think about since the words left her mouth. Why was she helping them? What kind of mother betrayed her children's memory to save their murderers? Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs. Because I'll starve too. The truth tasted like ash. Because all the captive women will. Because survival doesn't care about revenge. It wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was uglier, more complicated. The whole truth was that part of her wanted to prove she was still worth something beyond scrubbing and silence, that her mind still worked even if her heart was shattered, that she could still matter. Selfish, disgusting. While her baby's bones lay cold in ruins, Gunnar made a sound that might have been agreement or disgust. "I'll send 2 men tonight. If they confirm the passage exists, we talk again." He left without another word. The shed door swung shut, leaving Thyra alone with 17 sacks of grain and the crushing weight of what she'd just done. Her legs gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting in the dirt, arms wrapped around her knees. The tears came finally, silent and burning. She pressed her face against her arms and tried to remember how to breathe. Eric had been 7, old enough to understand when the raiders came, old enough to be terrified. She'd been holding Halfdan, trying to run when they'd grabbed her. She'd screamed for Eric to follow, but there was smoke everywhere and men with torches, and her little boy had frozen in fear. The last time she saw him, he was standing in the doorway of their burning home, crying for her. A sound escaped her throat, animal and raw. She bit down on her arm to muffle it. Thralls who made too much noise got beaten. Or worse. The afternoon crawled past. Other women came and went from the storage shed, carrying supplies to the kitchen. They didn't speak to Thyra. Nobody spoke to anyone anymore unless necessary. Words cost energy they couldn't spare. By evening, Gunnar's scouts had returned. Thyra heard about it from one of the younger thralls who brought her a cup of broth so thin it was basically hot water. "They found it," the girl whispered, her eyes huge. "The passage, just like you said." Thyra's stomach clenched. Relief and horror tangled together until she couldn't separate them. She'd been right, which meant they might escape, which meant she'd actually helped them. "War leader wants you," the girl continued, "in the Great Hall. Now." The walk across the settlement felt like walking to execution. Men stared at her as she passed. Word had spread somehow. The captive who knew secrets. The Jarl's daughter who'd given away her uncle's weakness. Traitor. The word echoed in her skull with every step. The Great Hall was crowded with warriors, their faces hard and hungry. Gunnar stood near the hearth with 3 older men she recognized as the Jarl's closest advisors. They fell silent when she entered. "You were right." Gunnar's voice carried across the hall. Not quite friendly, but no longer dismissive either. "The passage exists. My men counted maybe 6 guards on the eastern approach. Nothing we can't handle." Thyra nodded, not trusting her voice. One of the advisors, a gray-bearded Carl named Steiger, stepped forward. "How do we know this isn't exactly what Brander wants? Lead us into the rocks where we're vulnerable? Because if it was a trap, he'd have more men there." The words came out stronger than she felt. 6 guards means he's covering a possibility he thinks is unlikely. He doesn't believe you're desperate or stupid enough to try it. "Are we?" another advisor asked. "Desperate or stupid?" "Both," Gunnar said bluntly, "but we're also out of options." He turned back to Thyra. "If we attempt this, you're coming with us, on the first ship, where I can see you." Her heart lurched. Leave? Actually leave this place? But also, on? The first ship meant first into danger. If something went wrong, if Brander had anticipated this after all, she'd die with them. Gunnar wasn't offering rescue. He was taking insurance. "I understand, my lord." "Good." Gunnar looked at his men. "We leave tomorrow night, 2 hours after sunset when the tide's right. 3 ships, pack light, move fast. We break through the eastern guards and we're free to the open sea." The warriors began talking at once, voices rising with something that might have been hope. Thyra stood frozen in the center of it all, wondering what she'd unleashed. Steiger approached her, his expression unreadable. "If this goes wrong, girl, you'll wish we'd left you to starve." She met his eyes. "If this goes wrong, we'll all be dead anyway." He grunted and walked away. Gunnar dismissed the gathering. Men filed out, already planning, already preparing. Thyra turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "One more thing." She waited. Why does a Jarl's daughter know? Navigation and tide charts. The question sat between them. She could lie, should lie, but she was so tired of lying. Because my father wanted a son and got me instead, so he taught me everything he would have taught a boy. Something shifted in Gunnar's expression. Not quite sympathy, maybe recognition. My father wanted a farmer, he said quietly. Got a warrior instead. Funny how that works. He left her standing there, trying to figure out if that was understanding or mockery or something else entirely. The message arrived at dawn. Thyra was hauling water from the well when she saw the commotion near the gates. A single man stood there, unarmed, holding a white banner. A messenger. From Brander. Her bucket slipped from numb fingers, water splashing across frozen ground. Warriors surrounded the messenger, weapons drawn but not striking. Sacred law protected envoys even between enemies. Gunnar emerged from the longhouse, still fastening his belt, and spoke with the man briefly. Then, the messenger handed him something small, a piece of carved wood. Even from this distance, Thyra recognized it. A gaming piece. From her father's Hnefatafl set. The king piece specifically. Her knees went weak. Gunnar's eyes found her across the settlement. His expression was unreadable, but he jerked his head toward the great hall. A summons. The messenger was already being escorted away, his duty done. Thyra's feet moved without conscious thought. Other thralls watched her pass, their faces carefully blank. They knew. Everyone knew. The Jarl's daughter was about to learn what her uncle wanted. Inside the hall, Gunnar stood alone near the cold hearth, turning the game piece over in his fingers. Intricate carvings covered its surface. Her father's work. He'd spent an entire winter crafting that set, teaching her strategy while his hands shaped wood. He knows you're alive. Gunnar's voice was flat. Yes. The word barely made it past her lips. He sent terms. Gunnar set the piece. Down on the table between them with deliberate care. He'll lift the siege. Let us leave peacefully. All he wants in exchange is you. The room tilted. Freedom. She could go home, be with family again, sleep without fear, eat real food, mourn her children properly instead of swallowing grief like poison every moment. All she had to do was walk out those gates. There's more. Gunnar's tone made her stomach clench. He wants you delivered to him personally. By me. Alone. At the northern beach. Noon today. Something cold slithered down her spine. Why those terms? Because he doesn't trust us not to kill you rather than hand you over. Wants to make sure you arrive alive and intact. Gunnar's jaw tightened. Or he's planning to kill me the moment I'm in range and take you anyway. Hard to say with these things. Thyra's mind raced. Brander was many things, but he wasn't needlessly cruel. If he wanted her back, he'd honor the exchange. Probably. Unless he blamed her for surviving. Unless he thought she'd been defiled beyond redemption. Viking law was murky about captive women, especially high-born ones. Some families welcomed them back. Others considered them already dead. What happens if you refuse? She asked. We try the Eastern Passage tonight as planned. He might have moved more men there by now. Might be waiting for us. The game piece was a message. He knows we're planning something. Gunnar picked up the carved king again, studying it. How long ago did he teach? You to play this? The question caught her off guard. I was maybe 9 years old. Why? Because in Hnefatafl the king piece is surrounded, trapped. Its only hope is finding an escape route the attackers didn't anticipate. He set the piece down again, this time placing it deliberately in the center of the table. Surrounded, just like them. He's telling you he knows what we're trying, offering you a way out before it fails. Brilliant, cruel, exactly like Brander. But you're not sure if... It's real, Thyra said slowly. The offer might be genuine, or it might be him testing whether I've actually helped you. If you show up alone, he captures or kills you and still keeps the siege. If you don't show up, he knows I've turned traitor. Gunnar's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. Exactly. They stood in silence. Outside, the settlement was waking up. Men preparing for tonight's escape attempt, sharpening weapons, loading supplies onto ships, all based on information she'd provided. Information Brander might now know she'd provided. "What do you want to do?" Gunnar asked. The question startled her. "Me? I'm a thrall. I don't get to decide. You're Erlinger's daughter, Brander's niece, and right now you're the only person in this settlement who knows him well enough to guess what he's really planning." Gunnar crossed his arms. "So I'm asking, what does your uncle want?" Thyra closed her eyes, tried to think past the desperate hope clawing at her. Chest, home, safety, family, everything she'd lost. But Brander had sent the king piece. The trapped king. He was telling her she was surrounded, yes, but also reminding her how Hnefatafl worked. The king won by escaping to the corners, by finding paths others missed. He was testing her. "He wants to know if I've stayed loyal," she said quietly. "If I've given you information. This whole offer might be bait. Show up alone and he kills you. Or show up and he questions me about what I've told you. And when he realizes I've helped you escape, he..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "He'd kill you for betraying him," Gunnar finished, after making an example first. Her father's brother, the man who'd taught her to braid rope and spot weather changes, who'd mourned with her when her boys died because they'd been his blood too. He'd kill her now without hesitation if he thought she'd chosen enemy survival over family honor. "The Eastern Passage is still our best option," Thyra said, forcing the words out. "Whether he knows about it or not, staying here means slow death. The exchange offer is too risky, for both of us." Gunnar watched her for a long moment. "You're choosing us, over your own freedom. I'm choosing survival over a gamble I can't win." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. What if Brander's offer was genuine? What if she was throwing away her only chance at rescue because she was too paranoid, too broken to recognize kindness anymore? What if her children were watching from whatever came after death, seeing their mother help their killers escape justice? Her throat closed. She turned away before Gunnar could see her face crumble. "There's something else you should know." His voice was quieter now. "The men have been talking about you. Some think you're valuable, worth protecting. Others think you're dangerous, a spy who'll turn on us the moment it suits you. What do you think?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Silence stretched between them. When Gunnar finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. "I think you're the smartest person in this settlement, and the most dangerous, because you have nothing left to lose except your life, and I'm not sure how much you value that anymore." He was right. God's help her. He was completely right. "I'll refuse Brander's terms," Gunnar continued. "Tell the messenger you're needed here, that we'll take our chances with the siege. He'll know what that means, that you've chosen." Chosen. Such a simple word for something that felt like cutting out her own heart. "After tonight," Gunnar said, moving toward the door, "assuming we survive, things will be different. The men will know you saved them. That carries weight, even for a thrall." He left before she could respond. Thyra stood alone in the empty hall, staring at the carved king piece on the table. She picked it up, felt the familiar grooves her father's knife had made, remembered his hands guiding hers across the game. Bored, teaching her that sometimes the only way to win was to run. But running meant abandoning everything, and she'd already abandoned so much. The great hall door opened again. Not Gunnar this time. Steiger, the gray-bearded advisor, with two other warriors behind him. "We need to talk," Steiger said, and his tone made every muscle in her body tense. "About what happens if you're wrong. About what we do with you if your uncle is waiting for us in those rocks tonight." Thyra's fingers tightened around the game piece until the carved edges bit into her palm. "If I'm wrong," she said quietly, "you won't have time to do anything to me. We'll all be dead." Steiger's expression didn't change. "Maybe, but insurance is a reasonable precaution. You'll be on the first ship, like the war leader said. Right at the front, first into whatever's waiting. And if arrows start flying from those rocks, well," he smiled, cold and sharp, "you'll know you were wrong very quickly." They left her there, holding her father's king piece, understanding fully now what her choice meant. She'd become the sacrifice, the first piece into danger, valuable enough to save, but expendable enough to risk. The sun was setting when Thyra learned the truth about her son's deaths. She'd been assigned to help load the ships, carrying supplies from the storage sheds down to the beach. Mindless work, physical enough to distract from thinking about what would happen in a few hours. Warriors moved around her with tense efficiency, checking weapons, securing cargo, speaking in low voices. That's when she overheard them. Two younger warriors, maybe 19 or 20, standing near the second ship. They didn't notice her approaching with a sack of dried fish. Or maybe they just didn't care. Thralls were invisible until you needed them. Still feels wrong, one was saying, using her like this. She's Erlinger's blood, enemy. The second one spat into the sand. Besides, Gunnar's got no choice. If she's lying, better she takes the first arrow than one of us. I know, but the first warrior shifted uncomfortably. My sister had 2 boys about that age. When I think about, don't. The second one's voice went hard. Don't think about it. We followed orders. Wasn't personal. Felt personal when that little one was screaming for his mother. Thyra's hands went numb. The sack slipped from her grip, hitting the ground with a dull thud. Both warriors turned, seeing her for the first time. Their faces drained of color. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Her vision tunneled until all she could see were their guilty expressions. Which one? Her voice came from somewhere far away. Didn't sound like her at all. Which one of you killed my children? The first warrior, the one with the sister, looked like he might vomit. We didn't. It wasn't. The fire killed them. The second one found his spine faster. Defensive. We set the torch, yeah, but we didn't know there were kids still. Inside. By the time we heard them, it was too late to... You heard them screaming and you did nothing. Statement, not question. The words tasted like blood. There was nothing to do. His voice rose. The whole structure was collapsing. Going in would have been suicide. We tried to... You tried. Thyra took a step toward them, then another. Something was breaking open inside her chest, hot and terrible. You tried while my babies burned alive calling for me. How hard did you try? How long did you... Listen to them scream before you decided it wasn't worth the risk? The first warrior's face crumpled. I'm sorry. Gods, I'm so sorry. Every night I hear, sorry. The word came out like a laugh, like choking. You're sorry. You're haunted. Poor you. She was moving forward again without meaning to. The warriors were backing up. One reached for his knife but didn't draw it. What could he do? Strike a thrall for speaking truth? Eric was 7 years old. He was afraid of the dark. We had to leave a lamp burning in his room every night or he'd have nightmares. The words poured out of her like poison. Halfdan still sucked his thumb. He had this little carved horse my husband made him and he carried it everywhere. Did you find it in the ashes? Did you kick it aside when you were looting our home? Thyra. Gunnar's voice cut through the red haze. She hadn't heard him approach. Step back. She didn't move. Couldn't. The 2 warriors looked relieved to see their leader, like he'd rescue them from this uncomfortable conversation. They killed my children. She said it clearly. Wanted everyone on the beach to hear. These 2 men. They set fire to my home while my boys were still inside. They listened to them die. We followed orders. The second warrior said, appealing to Gunnar now. The raid was... Things got confused. We didn't know. You knew enough to set the fire. Thyra's hands were shaking violently. You knew enough to loot afterward. You just didn't know enough to care about 2 little boys burning alive. The beach had gone quiet. Other warriors had stopped working, were watching. The first ship was already loaded, waiting. The tide was dropping. They needed to move soon. Gunnar's expression was unreadable. Get back to work, he told the 2 warriors. They fled gratefully. Then he turned to Thyra. I need you functional, not like this. Like what? Her voice broke. Angry? Grieving? Human? Dangerous. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You're dangerous like this, to yourself and to this escape. I need your mind sharp, not drowning in rage. My children are dead because of your men. I know. You knew which ones. I led the raid." Gunnar's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Every death is my responsibility, including your sons. So when you're looking for someone to hate, look at me. But do it after we're clear of this God's damned siege." The honesty of it stunned her. No deflection, no excuses, just brutal acknowledgement. "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why did you attack us? We had no quarrel with you. My father never—" "Your father's men raided our coast 2 summers ago, killed my uncle, burned our fields." Gunnar's jaw tightened. "So yes, you had quarrel with us. You just didn't know it." The ground tilted under her feet. "That's not— My father wouldn't—" "Your father was a Jarl. Jarls raid. It's what we do." He wasn't cruel about it, just tired. "I'm not asking you to forgive anything. I'm asking you to function for 3 more hours. After that, hate me all you want." Thyra wanted to scream, wanted to claw his eyes out, wanted to collapse and never get up again. Instead, she picked up the dropped sack of fish. Her hands were still shaking, but she could hold it. She could move. She could breathe. "When this is over," she said quietly, "I want to know everything. What happened that day? Every detail. Why? Because they were my children, and I deserve to know how they died." Gunnar studied her for a long moment, finally nodded. "Fair enough." He walked away. Thyra stood alone on the darkening beach, holding dried fish and fresh grief, trying to remember how to be numb again. The first warrior, the one with the sister, approached cautiously. "I meant what I said. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't help, but—" "You're right." She cut him off. "It doesn't help. Nothing helps. They're still dead. I'm still here. And in an hour we're getting on those ships together, and you're going to sit behind me with an oar while I navigate us through rocks in the dark." He flinched. "If we make it through," Thyra continued, her voice eerily calm now, "you'll go on living. Have children maybe. Grow old. And sometimes late at night you'll remember 2 little boys screaming in a fire you set. And that's the only justice they'll ever get. Your nightmares." She walked past him, delivering the supplies to the first ship. Her ship. The one she'd ride at the very front. First into danger. First to die if she was wrong. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was helping her children's killers escape, guiding them to safety, saving their lives. What kind of mother did that make her? A practical one, maybe, or a coward, or just someone too broken to know the difference anymore. The tide was dropping steadily now. Soon it would be time. Warriors were gathering, checking weapons one last time, saying quiet prayers to gods Thyra wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Gunnar appeared, at her side again. "Front of the first ship, like we agreed. You'll call out obstacles, warn us about rocks. I'll be right behind you, to make sure I don't sabotage us, to make sure you stay alive. You're more valuable than you think now." He paused. "The men know you're guiding us. They know you could have taken Brander's offer and chose this instead. That matters. Does it matter to you?" She didn't know why she asked. Gunnar was quiet for several heartbeats. "My uncle's name was Tormod. He had 4 daughters. Your father's men killed him in his own yard while his girls watched. Then they burned everything." His eyes met hers in the dying light. "So no, it doesn't matter to me. You're a means to an end. Just like my raid was a means to an end. That's all any of this is. Honest. Brutal. True." Thyra climbed into the first ship, took her position at the front. Behind her, warriors filed in, filling the rowing benches. The ship rocked gently as men settled into place. The warrior, who'd killed her sons, was 3 rows back. She could feel his eyes on her, guilty and afraid. Good. Let him be afraid. Let him row until his hands bled. Let him wonder if she was leading them to safety or revenge. Let him live with what he'd done, just like she had to live with surviving it. The sun touched the horizon. The tide was right. Gunnar gave the signal. They pushed off from shore, oars biting into dark water, heading toward the eastern rocks where her uncle's men waited. The rocks appeared like teeth in the moonlight. Thyra knelt at the prow, one hand gripping the carved dragon head for balance, the other pointing into the darkness. Behind her, 30 warriors held their breath. The only sounds were oars dipping carefully into black water and her own voice, low and steady, calling directions. Left, 3 lengths. There's a submerged spine straight ahead. The ship veered. Wood scraped against stone somewhere below, a sound that made every man tense. But they cleared it. Barely. Thyra's heart hammered against her ribs. She was navigating from 15-year-old memories, from lessons learned before she'd had children, before she'd had anything to lose. What if she was wrong? What if the channel had shifted? Rock formations changed over time. Storms moved things. She could be leading them straight into, right now, hard right. The rowers obeyed instantly. Gunnar's voice came from directly behind her. How much further? Maybe 200 lengths. The passage narrows soon. That's where Brander's men will be waiting if they're anywhere. How many did my scouts count? 6, but that was yesterday. He might have reinforced after the message this morning. Silence. Just oars and water and her own ragged breathing. The second and third ships followed close behind, trusting her to find safe passage for all of them. 60 more lives balanced on her memory of charts she'd studied as a child. The passage narrowed. Rock walls rose on both sides now, close. Enough to touch. This was the bottleneck, the killing ground if Brander had anticipated them. Hold. Thyra's voice cut through the darkness. Every oar froze mid-stroke. She strained her eyes against the gloom. There. Movement on the left ridge. Firelight reflecting off metal. Men crouching between boulders. Armed men. Left side. Maybe 8 or 9. Gunnar cursed softly. More than yesterday. Can we go around? There is no around. This is the only channel deep enough. We go through or we go back. How close do we have to get? Thyra calculated distances, arrow range, spear throwing distance. The channel was maybe 30 lengths wide here. The men on the ridge had high ground. Advantage. But they'd have to time their volleys carefully in the dark or risk hitting rocks and wasting shots. 20 lengths. Maybe less before we're in range. 3 ships, 60 men. Gunnar was thinking aloud. They can't stop all of us, but they'll damage the first ship badly. Kill or wound maybe a third of us before we're through. The first ship, her ship. Thyra's mouth went dry. Could circle back, someone suggested from the rowing benches. Try another night. Brander will have every approach covered by morning. Gunnar's voice was hard. This is our chance, only chance. Thyra felt the weight of eyes on her back. 60 men waiting, trusting, hating, needing her knowledge but resenting that need. She'd gotten them this far. Now she was about to get some of them killed. The warrior, who'd burned her son, sat 7 rows back. Would he be one of the ones hit? Would that be justice or just more pointless death? There might be another way. The words left her mouth before she'd fully formed the thought. Talk fast. The men on the ridge, they're watching for ships, expecting us to try running through. What if we don't? Thyra, what if we send men up the rocks from this side, circle behind them? The ridge isn't that high, maybe 20 lengths of climbing. Your warriors could do it quietly. Take them from behind while they're focused on the water. The ship rocked gently. She could feel Gunnar thinking, weighing odds, calculating losses. We'd need to hold position here, in the open. If they spot us before our men reach the top, they'll slaughter us where we sit. Thyra turned to face him finally. His expression was unreadable in the darkness. But if it works, we get through without losing a single ship, without giving Brander any confirmation about which route we used. He'll think we're still trapped. And if it doesn't work, we're stuck in a bottleneck with nowhere to run. Yes. More silence. Then Gunnar made a decision. Steger, take 12 men, best climbers. You have until I count to 300. If you're not in position by then, we're running through regardless. The gray-bearded advisor didn't argue. Just selected warriors with quick, silent gestures. They slipped over the side of the ship into shallow water, moving toward the rock. Faced with barely a splash, Thyra watched them go. 12 men risking their lives because of her suggestion. If they died, it was her fault. If they succeeded, she'd saved 60 others. The mathematics of war, her father's lessons. Choose the option with the best odds and live with the consequences. But the consequences had names, faces, families waiting somewhere who'd never see them again. Why'd you suggest it? Gunnar's voice was quiet. Just for her. You could have let us row through. Maybe taken an arrow yourself, been done with all this. The thought had occurred to her, quick death instead of slow survival. Her children waiting in whatever came after. No more guilt, no more choosing between impossible options. I don't know, she whispered. And it was true. She didn't know why she kept helping them. Kept trying. Kept surviving when surviving felt like the worst punishment of all. You're a better tactician than most of my warriors. Gunnar shifted his weight, making the ship rock slightly. Your father taught you well. My father's dead because of your raid. I know. My husband, my children, everyone I loved. I know. So why are we having this conversation like we're allies? Like I'm not supposed to hate you with everything I have left? Gunnar was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something that might have been weariness or regret. Hard to tell in the dark. Because hate doesn't change anything. Your family's still dead. Mine's still dead. We're still here. And right now, in this moment, we need each other to survive the next hour. He paused. After that, you can go back to hating me. Movement on the ridge. Thyra's heart jumped. But it was Steger's men. Dark shapes flowing between rocks like shadows. They'd reached the top faster than expected, were positioning themselves behind the guards. They're in place, she breathed. Gunnar raised his hand, waited. 3 heartbeats. 4. Then dropped it. The attack was silent and brutal. Thyra heard muffled sounds, gasps, bodies hitting stone. It was over in moments. Steiger appeared at the ridge top, waving them forward. No alarm had been raised. No arrows flew. The guards were dead or unconscious, and Brander's siege remained intact everywhere else. He'd never know they'd slipped through until morning revealed the empty settlement. Row, Gunnar commanded. Quickly now, before anyone notices. The ships moved forward, gliding through the narrow channel. Thyra guided them past the last obstacles, her voice mechanical, her mind elsewhere. They'd done it. Actually done it. They were escaping. She'd saved them. The realization hit like a physical blow. She'd saved her children's killers, helped them escape justice, guided them to freedom while Eric and Halfdan's bodies lay cold in ruins that would never be avenged. Her vision blurred. She gripped the dragon head tighter, nails digging into wood. Almost through, Gunnar said. Behind her. You did it. We did it, he meant. But the words landed wrong. She'd done it. Her knowledge, her strategy, her betrayal of everything she should stand for. The channel opened suddenly into wider water. Open sea. Freedom. Warriors started breathing again. Someone laughed quietly. Relief rippled through all 3 ships. Thyra felt nothing. Just emptiness, where emotions should be. Where do we go now? Someone asked. Good question. They'd escaped Brander's siege, but they were still homeless, still hunted. The nearest friendly settlement was weeks away by sea. They had limited supplies. Winter was coming. Gunnar looked at Thyra. Where would Brander expect us to go? She should refuse to answer, should stay silent, let them figure it out themselves. But her mouth opened anyway. North, to your allies in the outer islands. That's the logical choice. So we go south. South is open water, storms, no settlements for... I know. Gunnar smiled, sharp and cold. That's why.
Brander won't follow immediately. He'll check the northern routes first. By the time he realizes we went south, We'll have enough lead to reach the trading posts on the mainland coast. It was a good plan. Risky but sound. Her father would have approved. The thought made her want to vomit. Get some rest, Gunnar told her. We row through the night. By dawn, we need to be far enough out that we're invisible from shore. Thyra moved away from the prow, finding a space between supply sacks. The warrior who'd killed her sons was staring at her. She met his eyes, saw gratitude there, and shame, and something that might have been hope that she'd forgive him someday. She looked away, closed her eyes, tried not to think about anything at all. The ship rocked gently. Oars splashed. Men spoke in low voices, already retelling the escape, making it into a story, praising Thyra's guidance, her cleverness, her courage. They didn't understand. Courage would have been refusing. Courage would have been accepting death rather than collaboration. This wasn't courage. This was just survival. And survival, she was learning, was its own kind of dying. 5 days at sea changed everything. Thyra sat near the mast of the lead ship, mending a torn sail with borrowed needle and thread. Her fingers moved automatically, weaving repairs while her mind drifted. Around her, warriors who'd once looked through her like she was air now nodded when they passed, asked her opinion about weather patterns, shared their rations without being told to. Respect. She'd earned it, and it felt like swallowing glass. The warrior who'd killed her sons, his name was Kiatil, she'd learned, approached hesitantly. He'd been watching her for days now, working up courage for something. "May I sit?" His voice was rough from rowing and sea spray. Thyra didn't look up from her stitching. "It's not my ship." He sat anyway, close enough to talk quietly but not so close as to invade. Respectful distance, like she mattered now. "I wanted to thank you." The words came out stiff, rehearsed. "For getting us out. For the plan with the ridge. My sister, she has those 4 girls I mentioned. Because of you, I'll see them again." The needle slipped, pricked her thumb. Blood welled up, bright red against calloused skin. Thyra watched it for a moment before wiping it on her dress. "Your sister's daughters get to grow up," she said quietly. "Mine don't. Funny how that works." Kjetil flinched but didn't leave. "No, nothing I say will." "Then don't say anything." She pulled the thread tight, finishing the repair. "You want forgiveness? Absolution? I don't have any to give. Your sister's girls are alive and mine are dead, and that's just how it is. You sitting here apologizing doesn't change it. I know. But I needed you to understand that He stopped, started again. "I never wanted children to die. That's not why I went on that raid. I was following orders. Things got confused and you chose to follow through anyway." Thyra finally looked at him. Really looked. He was young, maybe 22, scared and guilty and desperate for her to say it wasn't his fault. "You heard them screaming and you made a choice. Own it. Don't hide behind orders." His face crumpled. For a moment she thought he might cry. Instead, he stood abruptly and walked away, shoulders hunched against wind that suddenly felt colder. Thyra went back to her mending. Her hands were shaking again. "You're hard on him." Gunnar's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. "He murdered my children. He followed orders during a raid that was retaliation for your father's raid. Where does the blame start? Where does it end?" Gunnar settled beside her, studying the horizon. "My uncle's daughters watched him die. Should they hate every warrior from your father's crew? Should they spend their lives seeking vengeance? Or should they live? That's not the same, isn't it?" Thyra's jaw tightened. "What? Do you want Gunnar? To talk about what happens when we reach the mainland?" He gestured toward the other ships following in their wake. "The men have been discussing it. You've proven your value. Several warriors have suggested we offer you something more than thrall status." Her needle froze mid-stitch. "What are you suggesting?" "Freedom. Conditional. You'd still be under my protection, still bound to the settlement, but you'd have rights. Could own property. Make decisions about your own life." It should have felt like victory.
like justice after months of degradation. Instead, it felt like a trap closing around her throat. In exchange for what? Your continued counsel, your knowledge of tactics, navigation, politics. You'd advise me, help plan defenses, trade routes, diplomatic negotiations. Gunnar's expression was neutral, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. You're wasted scrubbing floors. We both know it. So I become your strategist, help you raid other settlements, help you kill other people's children, or help me avoid conflicts, negotiate treaties, build alliances that don't require bloodshed. He leaned forward slightly. You think I enjoy war? I don't. I'm good at it because I have to be. But I'd rather spend my time building than destroying. You could help with that. Thyra studied his face, looking for the lie, for the manipulation. But she'd spent enough time around him now to recognize when he was being honest. This was a genuine offer, which made it worse somehow. The men would accept this? She asked. A former enemy advising their war leader? Some already suggested it. Others will follow. You saved their lives. That earns respect even from those who'd rather hate you. Gunnar paused. Steiger thinks you're the smartest person in the fleet. Coming from him, that's high praise. Steiger threatened to kill me if the escape failed. And now he wants you on the council. People change their minds when evidence changes. Gunnar stood, preparing to leave. Think about it. We reach the mainland tomorrow. I'll need an answer then. He walked away, leaving her alone with her mending and her thoughts. Freedom, rights, purpose beyond survival. Everything she'd lost could never be restored, but she could build something new, become someone who mattered again. Use her mind, her skills, her father's teachings, for something beyond scrubbing blood from floors. All she had to do was fully commit to these people, accept them as her clan. Let go of vengeance she'd never get anyway. Become the thing her children would be ashamed of if they could see her. The sun was setting, painting the sea in shades of red and gold. Beautiful and indifferent. The world didn't care about her moral crisis. The waves kept rolling. The ships kept moving. Life kept happening whether she was ready or not. You should accept. A woman's voice. Thyra turned to find Ragna, another captive from a different raid settling nearby. She was older, maybe 40, with gray threading through her dark hair. The offer, I mean. You'd be stupid to refuse. You heard. Everyone heard. Sound carries on water. Ragna pulled out her own mending, a torn tunic that needed patches. I've been a thrall for 6 years. Watched other women get offers like that. The ones who accepted lived better, ate better, had futures. The ones who refused out of pride or principle. She shrugged. They're still thralls. Or dead. Doesn't it bother you? Serving the people. Who destroyed your life? Every single day. Ragnar's voice was matter of fact. But being bothered doesn't change anything. Doesn't bring back what's gone. So I survive. I make the best of what I have. And maybe, if I'm lucky, I'll live long enough to see my grandchildren, if my daughter had any before she died. The casualness of it staggered Thyra. This woman had lost everything too, had swallowed her grief and her rage and her pride and just kept going. For 6 years? Could Thyra do that? Just accept and move forward? How do you stand it? The question came out raw. How do you wake up every day and not want to? She couldn't finish. Die, Ragna supplied bluntly. I did want to. First year especially. Thought about it constantly. Walking into the sea, stealing a knife, picking a fight I couldn't win. She threaded her needle carefully, but I didn't. Know why? Thyra shook her head. Because dying would mean they won completely, would mean I gave them everything, including my future, my hope, my ability to spite them by surviving. Ragna smiled, cold and sharp. So I lived, and every day I'm still breathing is a day I didn't give them. That's victory enough for me. The words settled into Thyra's chest like stones. Not comfort exactly, but understanding. Recognition. The men are starting to see you as one of them. Ragna continued. That's dangerous in its own way, because when you're one of them, you stop being just a victim. You become complicated, human, harder to hate. Maybe I don't want to be one of them. Then stay a thrall. Stay invisible and powerless and safe in your righteousness. Ragna's voice gentled slightly. But I've watched you these past days. You're not built for invisibility. You're your father's daughter, and that means you're built to lead, whether you want to or not. She stood, gathering her mending, and paused. Think about what your boys would want. Not what would honor their death. What would honor their lives. Would they want their mother to waste away? Or would they want her to survive? To matter? To use the brilliant mind their grandfather gave her? Ragna left before Thera could respond. The sun finished setting. Stars emerged, cold and distant. The ship rocked steadily, carrying them all toward whatever came next. Thyra closed her eyes and tried to imagine Eric's face. Halfdan's laugh. The way they'd fight over toys and then curl up together at night like puppies. What would they want for her? The answer came quietly, unbidden, devastating in its simplicity. They'd want her to live, not just survive. Live. Be someone they could be proud of if they were watching from wherever dead children go. Thyra opened her eyes. The mainland was a dark smudge on the horizon. Tomorrow they'd arrive. Tomorrow Gunnar would ask for her answer. And she already knew what it would be. Not because she'd forgiven anything. Not because the pain had lessened or the grief had faded. But because Ragna was right. Dying. Inside, while her body kept moving, wasn't victory. It was just slow surrender. And she was done surrendering. The mainland coast appeared through morning fog like a promise and a threat tangled together. Thyra stood at the prow again, but this time no one had placed her there as insurance. She'd chosen it, wanted to see the new land first, wanted to face whatever came next head-on instead of hiding in the middle of the ship like cargo. Behind her, warriors prepared to disembark, checking weapons, out of habit more than necessity. This was a trading settlement, neutral ground where even enemies could conduct business without bloodshed. Supposedly. Gunnar approached, his footsteps deliberate enough that she heard him coming. He'd learned to do that. Give her warning instead of startling her. Small mercy, but she'd noticed. Have you decided? No preamble, direct as always. Thyra kept her eyes on the shore. Wooden docks extended into gray water, buildings clustered behind them, smoke rising. From cooking fires. Normal life happening for people who hadn't lost everything. I'll accept your offer, she said, with conditions. Name them. I want Kajetil transferred to a different settlement. The words came out harder than she intended. I can't advise you effectively if I'm constantly seeing the man who burned my children alive. Send him somewhere else. Give him to another Jarl, I don't care. Just get him away from me. Gunnar was quiet for a moment. He's a good warrior, loyal, skilled. Then someone else will value him. But I can't. Her voice cracked. She steadied it. I can't do this with him there. I'll try. I'll fail. And eventually I'll do something we'll both regret. Better to remove the problem now. Fair enough. What else? I want the other captive women given choices. Not freedom necessarily, but options. Let them work toward earning their status like you're offering me. Give them paths that aren't just scrubbing in silence. That's not how thralls work. Then change how they work. Thyra finally turned to face him. You want my counsel? Here it is. Your settlement is small, vulnerable. You need every person functioning at their highest capacity, not wasted on menial labor. Those women are smart, capable. Use them properly and you strengthen the whole community. Keep them as invisible drudges, and you waste resources you can't afford to waste. Gunnar's expression shifted. Not quite agreement, but consideration. The men won't like it. The men didn't like taking advice from me either, until it saved their lives. She crossed her arms. You're the war leader. Lead. Make them understand that strength comes from using all available assets, not just the ones with cocks. Gunnar supplied with the ghost of a smile. I was going to say traditional authority, but sure, that. He laughed. actually laughed, short and surprised, but genuine. Gods, you really are your father's daughter. The comparison still hurt, still made her want to flinch, but it hurt less than it had 5 days ago, less than it had a month ago. The grief was still there, heavy and permanent, but she was learning to carry it instead of letting it crush her. Is that all? Gunnar asked. One more thing. This was the hard one, the one she'd been working up courage for all morning. I want a memorial for my sons. Nothing elaborate, just something. 2 stones with their names, a place I can go to remember them properly. Gunnar's face sobered. Where? Wherever we settle. I don't care where exactly. Just somewhere I can visit. Somewhere that acknowledges they existed, that they mattered. Her throat closed. She pushed through it. Everyone else gets to honor their dead. I should too. Agreed. No hesitation, no negotiation, just instant acceptance. I'll have it done as soon as we establish the new settlement. You can choose the location yourself. Relief flooded through her so intensely she had to grip the dragon head for balance. She'd expected resistance, expected him to call it a waste of resources or a security risk or something. Instead, he just agreed. Thank you. The words felt strange in her mouth. Thanking the man who'd led the raid that killed them. But this wasn't about him. This was about Eric and Halfdan having a place in the world, even though they'd left it. The ships glided toward the docks. People gathered to watch, curious about new arrivals. Merchants calculating potential profit. Guards assessing potential threat. Normal coastal town rhythms. One thing you should know, Gunnar said as they prepared to disembark. This offer I'm making, it's not charity. I genuinely need your mind, your skills. The settlement's survival might depend on having someone who thinks like you do. I know, that's why I'm accepting. Thyra met his eyes. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me, because wasting away as a thrall isn't living. It's just dying slowly. Good. I'd rather have an advisor who's honest about her motivations than one who pretends loyalty she doesn't feel. They docked. Warriors secured lines, unloaded supplies. Thyra stepped onto solid ground for the first time in 6 days. Her legs wobbled slightly, readjusting to land that didn't move. Steiger approached, his expression grave. We've got a problem. Brander's men are here, 3 of them. They arrived yesterday asking questions about ships matching our description. Thyra's stomach dropped. They followed us? No. They went north first, like you predicted, but they're checking all the coastal settlements now. Systematic search. Steiger glanced at Gunnar. They haven't spotted us yet. We came in from the east side, but it's only a matter of time. How long do we have? Gunnar asked. Maybe an hour before someone mentions 3 ships arriving this morning. Less if we're unlucky. Thyra's mind raced. 3 of Brander's men meant scouts, not a war party. They'd observe, report back, bring the full force later. Which meant the settlement had maybe 2 days before her uncle arrived with 90 warriors demanding Gunnar's head. We need to leave, Gunnar said. Now, before they see us. No. Thyra surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. Both men turned to stare at her. Running makes you look guilty, makes you look weak. Stay, negotiate. Negotiate what? Brander wants blood for the siege we escaped. Brander wants justice. There's a difference. Thyra's thoughts crystallized. Let me talk to his men. Let me explain that I'm here voluntarily, that I chose to help you escape. That changes the narrative. I'm not a captive anymore. I'm a free woman making my own decisions. He'll never accept that, Steiger said. You're family. You're supposed to seek vengeance, not survive. Thyra's voice hardened. Not rebuild my life. I'm a widow with dead children. By Viking law, I can choose my own path now. I can align with whoever I want, even former enemies. Gunnar studied her face. You're offering to be the shield, stand between us and your uncle's wrath. I'm offering to be honest, tell the truth, that I'm done with vengeance because vengeance won't bring my sons back, that I'm choosing to live instead of spending the rest of my life chasing ghosts. She took a breath. It might not work. He might reject it. But it's better than running and proving you're afraid of him. The 2 men exchanged glances. some unspoken communication passing between them. "It's risky," Stigri said finally. "If Brander decides you've been compromised, corrupted, he could kill me. I know." Thyra had already accepted that possibility, but he might also listen. He's not unreasonable, and if there's even a chance of avoiding more bloodshed, isn't it worth trying? Gunnar made his decision. Find Brander's scouts, bring them to the trade hall. Thyra will speak with them, alone if she wants. "Not alone," Thyra said quickly. "You should be there. This concerns both of us." They found Brander's men within 20 minutes, brought them to the neutral ground of the trade hall where weapons were forbidden and violence was taboo. The 3 scouts were older warriors, cautious and professional. They recognized Thyra immediately. Lady Thyra. The lead scout, a man named Ulf, who'd served her father, looked genuinely relieved. "Thank the gods. Lord Brander has been searching." "I know." She cut him off gently. "I'm alive, I'm unharmed, and I'm here by choice." Confusion crossed Ulf's face. "My lady, we can escort you back. Your uncle has ships waiting. He'll be overjoyed to—" "I'm not going back." The words hung in the air like sword strokes. "I'm staying with Gunnar's settlement, as his advisor, by my own free will." The silence was crushing. Ulf stared at her like she'd grown a second head. The other 2 scouts looked between her and Gunnar, hands twitching toward weapons that weren't there. "Lady Thyra," Ulf said carefully, "if you're being coerced, if there's some threat—" "There's no threat, no coercion." She kept her voice steady. "I helped them escape the siege. I guided them through the Eastern Passage. I saved 60 lives. And now I'm choosing to continue working with them because I'm more useful alive and thinking than dead or wasting away in grief. But your sons, your family, they are dead." The word cut like glass. "Nothing I do will change that. No amount of vengeance will bring them back. So I'm choosing to live, to use the skills my father taught me, to matter again." She paused. "Tell my uncle that I honor my family by surviving, by being someone my sons would be proud of, not by spending my life seeking revenge that will only create more orphans and widows." Ulf looked like he'd been slapped. "He'll never understand. He'll think—" "Then let him think it. I can't control his reaction, only my own choices." Thyra straightened her shoulders. "Tell him I'm alive, I'm safe, I'm making my own path, and if he loves me at all, he'll respect that even if he doesn't understand it." The scouts left looking shaken, carrying a message that would either start a war or prevent one. Gunnar waited until they were gone before speaking. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed." "Probably both." Thyra found she was trembling, reaction setting in. But it was true, every word. "I know." He studied her with something that might have been respect, or awe, or just exhaustion. "Welcome to the council, Thyra. Erlingsdottir, may the gods help us both." They walked back to the ships together, not friends, probably never friends, but something else, something new that didn't have a name yet. Survivors, allies, 2 people choosing tomorrow over yesterday. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't healing, wasn't closure, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, Thyra was learning, that had to be enough. Thyra's journey forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes survival demands choices that our hearts can never fully accept. She didn't forgive the unforgivable. She didn't find peace with her tragedy. She simply chose to keep breathing, to keep mattering, to honor her children by refusing to waste the mind and strength they would have been proud of. What would you have done in her place? Would you have chosen vengeance and certain death? Or would you have swallowed your rage and built something new from the ashes? There's no right answer. There's only the answer you could live with. And that's what makes her story so painfully human. She didn't become a hero or a villain. She became a survivor who had to wake up every morning and live with her choices, knowing her sons would never wake up at all. This is a story about the impossible mathematics of grief, about how we measure what we owe the dead against what we owe ourselves. Thyra discovered that revenge wouldn't resurrect her children, that hatred couldn't fill the emptiness they left behind. So she chose the harder path. Not forgiveness, but forward motion. Not closure, but continuation. She transformed from invisible victim to indispensable voice, not because she was strong, but because she refused to let her captors take her future along with her past. Her respect wasn't given. It was earned through intelligence, courage, and the devastating willingness to betray everything she thought she believed in order to become someone worth believing in again. If this story moved you, if it made you question what you would do when faced with impossible choices, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear about strength that doesn't look like strength and survival that doesn't feel like victory. Subscribe to follow more stories that challenge us to think deeper about the human condition, about the gray spaces between right and wrong where real people actually live. Because Thyra's story isn't just about Vikings and sieges, it's about every person who's ever had to choose between the past that defines them and the future that terrifies them. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling. And thank you for understanding that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply choose tomorrow.